Okay, let's just jump right in. We live in a world that is absolutely buzzing with information, right? You've got scientists, economists, futurists, politicians. It seems like everyone has a vision for the future, a fix for all our problems. So today, we're going to dive into a source text that gives us a really ancient framework for trying to make sense of this modern maze of voices.
I mean, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? When you're facing so many different and often competing claims about where we're all headed, figuring out what's true can feel, well, impossible. Who's actually holding the right map, and who might be leading us down a dead end? So, the source material we're digging into today bases its entire argument on this single warning, one that's nearly 2,000 years old. The idea here is that this piece of biblical advice is actually the key to sorting through all that noise and finding some genuine guidance. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Prophets? That sounds a little old-fashioned. But the source argues that a lot of people today are basically playing the role of a prophet. They're proposing these grand solutions to our big challenges, even if they'd never ever use that title. And here's the psychological hook, the part that makes it so tricky. The text points out a really simple human tendency. We are naturally drawn to the voices that promise us exactly what we want to hear. It's just how we're wired. And that makes us vulnerable, which is why figuring out the difference between true and false guidance is so important.
So how do we spot the false ones? Well, the source suggests that before you can do that, you first need to understand the ideal. By defining what a true prophet looks like, we can create a kind of benchmark, a measuring stick to hold everything else up against. Okay, let's dive into this.
And the text gives us a very specific definition here. See, it's not just about predicting the future, it's about being a guide. Someone who, according to the source, is sent from a higher source of wisdom, which it calls the light, to show all of humanity the right path forward.
So based on that definition, the source lays out 4 key traits. First, they have to understand the fundamental laws of creation. Second, they know where humanity is ultimately supposed to be headed. Third, they absolutely insist that our actions have to align with what the source calls the Creator's will. And finally, they have this deep, almost intuitive insight into how all these spiritual laws actually work.
So here's the bottom line, the crucial point. The source material argues that any solution that completely ignores the spiritual roots of our problems is, well, doomed to fail. True, lasting answers, it claims, have to be guided by the Spirit.
All right, so now that we've got the benchmark, let's flip the coin and look at the other side. The source gives us a really clear checklist of warning signs, red flags, to help us spot those who might be misleading us, whether they mean to or not.
What's really fascinating here is the core difference in motivation that the source points out. A true prophet, it says, points away from themselves, toward the Creator and toward personal accountability. But a false prophet? They focus on human smarts, they promise salvation without the hard work, and they're always seeking that personal validation, the likes and the followers. Okay, let's break these down even more. The source gives us 6 specific things to watch out for. False prophets tend to place all their hope in human ingenuity and nothing else. They constantly put themselves front and center looking for approval. They're rigid, dogmatic, and they hate being questioned. They offer you a free pass salvation without any personal responsibility. They'll justify harmful behaviors by calling it freedom. And finally, they teach that human beings are themselves divine.
Let's dig into that first point. The text argues that our total reliance on purely human solutions is the exact reason why history keeps repeating itself. It says things like peace conferences always fail to prevent the next war because they never get to the root spiritual problem, our simple failure to follow the Creator's most basic rule, which is to care for one another.
And this is a brilliant analogy the text uses to argue against that 6th indicator, the whole idea that man is divine. It asks this simple question. Is it really reasonable to think that a tiny 1.5-volt battery, like the one in your TV remote, could ever become a massive power station just by improving itself? The text uses this to show what it sees as the huge, unbridgeable gap between a human being and the Creator.
Okay, so we've got the benchmark for what's true and a checklist for what's false. So, what do we actually do with all this? Let's move to the final section and see what advice the source gives for applying this in our own lives.
The text leaves us with a reference to another really famous piece of advice, but it shines a huge spotlight on one tiny word that often gets missed. It's not just seek and you will find, it's seek and you will find if we seek correctly. That little if changes everything.
So what does it mean to seek correctly?
Well, the source defines it as searching for truth with genuine, total openness. It means we have to let go of our preconceived ideas. It means we can't just go looking for answers that confirm what we already believe or, just serve our own selfish goals.
And that leaves us with the final question, the one we have to ponder for ourselves. The source lays out a pretty clear framework, but at the end of the day, how we use it is personal. As we try to navigate this world of countless voices all telling us what to believe, what does seeking truth with real openness, without bias, without selfish motives, what does that actually look like for you?